Okay, so as promised, here's today's spooky story for Halloween. And this story doesn't take place in any of my houses. And it's one of the things that causes my children to say that it's not really my houses that are haunted, but rather me. And I'll tell you more stories as we go on so that you can see why they might say that. This story actually took place at a little cemetery we visited, and I went out and I took some video of that cemetery, which I'll tack on to the end of this so you can see where we were standing, where I saw this happen, and how far everything was. Now, this was a summer night, and it was probably 9-ish in the evening, so it was still light, but it was very dusky. And my husband and I, after the experience of our other house, began to do some paranormal investigating. And so we had gotten a new piece of equipment and we went out to this cemetery to see what we could find, because it had been rumored to be haunted by the laughter and the crying of children. So we wanted to see what we could capture. So out we went. And when we got there, my husband took the piece of equipment and started walking along the perimeter of the gate. I went to the side, or of the fence rather. I went to the side of the fence and was just standing looking into the cemetery because it was still light enough that I could see headstones. And all of a sudden, I see a man in a white naval uniform, naval dress whites from the World War II time frame, walk across one of the graves. He took about 6 steps and then he disappeared. And so my husband came back very shortly after that, and I asked him, "Did you go into the cemetery at all?" Because in the meantime, I'm trying to figure out what it was I saw, and my brain is like not computing, because I knew my husband wasn't wearing all white, nor was he wearing a naval uniform. He's never been in the military. And so he said no, and that he had not been inside of the gates, the fence of the cemetery. So I looked at him and I told him what I had seen. And then I told him that tomorrow morning we need to come back so that we can see what's going on here, because there's got to be something here. And so the next morning we did. We had picked up a young man who was doing some work for us on our farm. And on the way back to the farm, we stopped and took a look at this cemetery, which you'll see in just a moment. And when we went looking, we discovered that there were only 2 people in the entire cemetery who had military service. The first one had died in like 1925, so he couldn't have had World War II service. And then the other one we saw had World War I and World War II service when we looked him up. It wasn't evident on his tombstone, except for it was marked by a flag. So we looked him up and found that he had been in the military, in the Army in World War I, and in the Navy in World War II. And that's who we think was walking across the grave. He had taken 6 steps and just disappeared right into thin air, and I watched it happen right in front of my eyes. I went out yesterday now for this video and took some video of what I saw and where I saw it that night so that you can get an idea. It really only was about 50 to 60 feet from where I was standing that this all happened. Now what you're going to see in the video is initially one of my dogs responding to something that she sees in that cemetery that we don't. You can hear her growl. And then you'll see where I was standing. You'll see where the figure walked across the grave. And you'll see about the distance that it was. Also, at the end, I've included a photograph of the grave of the person we think was walking across the graves. This is the person with service in both the Army and the Navy, but I have blanked out his name and some of his dates for the privacy of the people who are his relatives. If you like this story, please hit the plus button and like it. And I will come back tomorrow and bring you a new story. And this one will be a real doozy. Have a great day. Did she growl at something? That's wild. That we can see. Because he walked right in front of that stone right there. Right there.
You know, if you stop just for a second, there you go.
Where I was standing in the cemetery, outside of the gates, was right about in here. Only it wasn't as overgrown outside of the gate. And I was outside of the gate, standing outside of the gate, looking in. So looking this way, you can see it's only about 50 to 60 feet from me.
Oh,
Where were you walking to that night? Because you didn't come in the cemetery, right?
Right, I just walked along the fence as far as I could down there.
Okay. Okay.